Now we come to this second round, and what I suggest is that given the time that we have, if we can touch at least one topic in each of the three areas, that is, two areas, that is policy and regulatory, and move it around and see what happens. So first, I come back to you as usual. If I remember, there was a PwC study done around 2016 where you had done a survey. And in that survey, you may recall that you said that the carrier before commodity, right? And you said that a lot of respondents were in favor of carrier before. Now, there's been a lot of argument, and you have seen, I'm not either way, but you've seen the data on utilization of infrastructure. So I want to ask this question to this panel. Do you think that the carrier before commodity still holds? And if it does hold, then what is the kind of, costs that should be, what you can say, the tipping point in the infrastructure business, as we have seen today? Secondly, do you think that there is a direct correlation between consumption growth and infrastructure? Because that doesn't seem to be the trend. And the talk that is taken from highways and railways and ports, that infrastructure is there, therefore growth takes place, is it really relevant in the case of gas, whereas in the other cases there may be latent demand, in this case there may be not?
Thank you so very much. It was a long question and there are so many queries within that, Mrs. Joshi. But let me start on a note. They say, on a very lighter note in the US, that if there isn't a solution, blame it on Sam. So it's so easy to blame the government for any small thing that you see as a bottleneck to your development of the sector. But unfortunately, I need to do that at this moment from a very different context. Is having an infrastructure before the commodity is undoubtedly the way, even as we speak today, Mr. Joshi, so I confirm this view as now. And it is essentially because there is an unsatiated market, unmet market, latent demand, and many, many consumers sitting across wanting to take gas. So I'm just simplifying it. We can get it complicated as much as we want. And on the other side, there is long LNG available in the world. So there is in between the infrastructure which isn't adequate or isn't able to be accessed, and therefore the two ends aren't meeting together. So clearly, at a very, very simple juxtaposition of all these articulations, it's simple that it's an infrastructure which is coming in the way. Now, who brings that infrastructure in? Are you trying to get private sector industry to do that? Obviously, it doesn't happen because in monopolistic industry across the world, it's been proven it can't be a string which is completely opened up. The government has to regulate the sector. Monopolistic infrastructure can completely go awry and restrict the development of the sector, and therefore government will play a role. And therefore, we would say that if there is any agility that is expected as of now, it is from the government, it is from the regulators to make this happen as early as possible, including the point that he mentioned, is to kind of subsidize or do viability gap funding to make sure that this is happening. Now, I wouldn't 100% blame the government because there are actions on all of these fronts underway and there is an activity which is coming in the way. But if I close my eyes and if I see where is the red spot, it is at the infrastructure and that will be developed. The other way to look at is to see what happened about 10, 12 years back. It was a completely demand-balanced market. Supply was completely constrained. And at that time, this question was very relevant because there isn't a commodity available. What do I do putting up an infrastructure? And if I see the infrastructure utilization percentages, it's for a new person to the sector, the answer is very clear that the infrastructure is not getting utilized and therefore there isn't a need for additional infrastructure to come up. But if we see now, gas is available, consumption is available, but there are challenges in infrastructure utilization. So there is something which is coming in the way of making that happen, and we are here to decode that. Having said that, I'm completely jumping onto a new subject which hasn't come out of all four of us pitches, and therefore I'm taking this up, and I'm sure there are newer aspects which will come up from other panelists also. Now, what happens if the infrastructure is put in place? Why isn't it coming up? Is it truly just the funding part, which is viability gap funding and viability of the pipeline, or are there more concerns? There are more concerns, definitely, and there are primary 3, 4, but I want to pick up something which doesn't get spoken of typically in such kind of fora, and therefore, maybe this is a subject which the regulator ought to take it up. Is in the NELP rounds 2006, if some of you were in the launch ceremony in Mumbai, the then respected Secretary Petroleum came onto the dais and very courageously said, if there is one sector in our India which doesn't have a litigation, it is oil and gas. And we are now down so many years. I wouldn't say that we have the maximum litigations, but this sector indeed, that is the exploration production sector, indeed is something which is completely fearful now of litigations, arbitrations, challenges, anomalies in the contracts, the past production sharing contracts, now improved RSCs and whatnot. I'll stop on exploration production there, but I'll come on to the transportation sector and investments to be made by private parties and so on, including city gas distribution. And I speak more from the city gas distribution perspective today than anything else, is that there isn't a comfort to the investors that for genuine reasons I will have to pay the price of legalities onto contracts. The contracts aren't necessarily risk-free for a genuine investor to come in here. And I've identified this, I presented to the chairman of Petroleum Regulatory Board, and each of those have been acknowledged. But there are some very genuine points on which the legal aspects of these contracts are very difficult to service. They're very difficult to service. Now, do we get into arbitrations and litigations? Today is one of the best times in our sector where the government, the regulator, the investors, the lenders, the whole of the ambience is working completely hand in hand, and the objective is to make the sector happen. But tomorrow, things may go wrong in any of these. Any spoke of the wheel may drop out and say, no, I want to be forceful on exercising my rights in the contract, and we want to make it happen. It can be a very risky position from this perspective. So I would count legal risk as one of those where investment ought to come in, and therefore there is a possibility of our regulations and contracts to improve. I'll take up more if time permits, but other speakers.
Thank you. I will not comment, but there is one aspect we'll come back to you later. Subir, since you've been associated with big funding of infrastructure in GAIL, would you also think that, the carrier should come first and the commodity later? That the infrastructure should be in place. And with that, there is one additional question, which I'll come back to you also. Should we be talking only about pipelines and this? And should we not be considering the entire ecosystem as it has been developed in all other areas, like the CNG stations, pipelines, the movement? Just up to you.
Thank you, Vivek. Undoubtedly, there is no doubt or there is no two opinion that infrastructure has to move forward. But what I meant to say was that the atmosphere and the ecosystem conducive for making investment in the infrastructure has to be made very transparent, very clear, and there has to be an element of consistency both in terms of what the government is trying to give in support, what the government is trying to commit, or say, for example, even in the the CGD bidding round, which is the new major area of investment in this gas sector, which is happening more than 1 lakh of crores of rupees. So there is a huge risk which are being taken by the investors going forward in the CGD sector, which is the topic of the day. There are players from both the public sector, the joint ventures, consortium of public and private sectors, and now also the private sector. So far, if you take the example of CGD, mostly it has been the government companies and the joint ventures of these government companies which have been taking the role. And it is only of late that the private sector has also stepped in with a lot of expectation, with a lot of belief that we have moved a long way in the regulatory environment, and things would move according to that. But there are still many issues which we still at this point of time are not very clear how it would pan out, as Deepak has been mentioning. 9th and 10th round has just started. maybe after a couple of years we would know, so where do we stand in respect of all the commitments and all the assurances that has been made while at the time of bidding. So that would be a big challenge to see, both in terms of the legal issues that they may crop up, or other issues, how it would be dealt. You know, in CGDs, it is very unlike a cross-country pipeline infrastructure laying. You have to deal with local, permissions, local factors are considered. There are many factors which are beyond the control of the CGD entity, and typically anybody would say that those are not, say for example, a force majeure event. But the ground reality is that there is delay happening, there would be delays happening. The bankers, on the other hand, are very, I would say, very cautious in lending money until unless they see a very strong promoter coming in for such kind of infrastructure projects, having certain elements of uncertainty how the cash flows will pan out. So the lenders have their own concern. Lenders seek protection. They would be seeking additional comfort from the promoters, and it is to be seen how those can be laid out to them. So I see that until unless we have some amount of clarity on those side, how the agreements or the contracts would be panning out, and maybe it's only a matter, only the time will be able to tell us that, in terms of legal issues or other issues, where we would stand at certain point of time. But it would be better if the regulator comes up, upfront and takes what you have just rightly mentioned, an overall view how the economic situation, how the political, social, and the administrative situation is on the ground, and take a more liberal approach when it would say, for example, like to impose the provisions of the contract at certain point of time. I think this is a big issue even for the lenders. They ask that, in such and such situation, how would you be dealing? So really nobody has an answer right now, but then those are the questions I'm sure that would come up, and at that point of time the regulator has to stand up, has to be mature enough to come to the side of the investors and the CGD entities which are making the investments.
Quickly, Mahesh, if you have, we have running to. What is your view? Since you have already, your company has already invested into pipeline, or your funds have invested, and but your model is different. It's the InvIT model that you've been working on for the takeover. But in a greenfield pipeline, do you think the decision would have been different? A, and one second. And B, how would you, what kind of tariff system do you think would be best?
Thank you, Vivek. See, I think essentially this issue that you discussed can be broken down into two aspects. One is what happens in the case of during the construction stage of the pipeline, and the second is post-construction. Before I dwell with the subject, I'll give you 3-4 examples what has happened in the recent past. The Surat-Paradip pipeline of GAIL, the authorization was rescinded. Recently, the Ennore-Nellore pipeline authorization was again rescinded. And thirdly, we as a PIL given many connectivities to CGD entities within the time frame which was agreed, but none of them have been able to start drawing the gas. They are stuck somewhere. Where they are stuck, let us see. See, why I give you example is, once the authorization is given, it doesn't mean that the pipeline will be built on the day that it is supposed to be, within 36 months or whatever it is. Now, there are a host of issues. Some of them are like, one is the permissions. Today, 23 permissions are required if you want to lay a pipeline. Now, again, there are multiple permissions. For the same permission, you need another interconnected permissions. So it goes in a spin. So this is one of the major issue which is there. Second one is the ROU acquisition. ROU acquisition is again full fraught with many issues. We have seen farmers' agitations in Tamil Nadu, then in Kerala, the state governments and central government again disputes. So that kind of issues are lingering in the industry. So having said this, I think then comes the tariff part. But these are the issues which I think either PNGRB or the Government of India needs to address, either through a regulatory framework or through a law. Now here, I think our suggestion would be that some kind of a utility corridor along the highways or a single window system for the permissions, something would definitely go a long way, but some serious efforts are required on the part of the government, though they have initiated some actions in that direction right now. And on the the development of the pipeline, what we have seen in, again, coming back to, there are many independent power plants on the East Coast, but none of them are today operating for XYZ reasons. One of them is, of course, the competition from the renewables. They are not able to be commercially viable. So based on certain demand, the pipeline was laid. There was enough demand, but whereas the demand vanished all of a sudden. So then what happens to the pipeline? Now this is where I think the regulator comes into the picture in terms of fixing the tariff. Now the regulator has given a certain return on investments, but again, that return on investment is based on certain volumes which the normally transport is expected to flow. But if market has vanished, then there is no fault of the transporter. So which is the best tariff system for the country? This is something that still needs a deliberation, and the regulators also need to take some kind of balanced views. But we are not saying that it should be totally in the interest of transporters, but of course, protecting the interest of the consumers at large, the interest of the transporters should also be taken care of. Now, in that direction, I think already PNGRB has also been actively considering appointment of a consultant for tariff reforms. But otherwise, apart from the conventional DCF or the COC methods, the unification of tariff, which I think our friend just now spoke, probably that is something for all the pipelines that would go a long way in addressing some of the issues, especially for gas sales, also protecting their margins and also benefiting the far-off customers as well as the nearby customers, and giving a level playing field for all the stakeholders would definitely go a long way. So I'm sure that going forward, there would be some tariff reforms which will benefit industry at large and also address these issues of visibility of demand as well as the supplies. And just to add, a friend also mentioned about the contracting part. At PIL, in fact, we have not been insisting for any fixed time period for contracting, like 1 year or 2 years or 6 months. Even one-day contract is also we are entertaining, which I think we had a meeting with IGX also, since they had met us for this gas hub activities. So we have assured from our side that there will be full cooperation, and also we had introduced deferred delivery services way back in 2012 to address, since pipeline had some spare capacity for storage on a temporary basis, and unnecessary imposing imbalance charges was avoided for the benefit of consumers. We are also now working on lending and storage of the gases in the pipeline, taking advantage of the pipeline capacity. So we are sure that with this imbalance services that which we are planning, will have the approval of the regulator as well, and it would definitely benefit the gas hub activities as well going forward. Thank you.